It's been said that Bigfoot exhibits nocturnal behavior, perhaps to hunt or to avoid detection. But the cloak of darkness couldn't hide the creature in the stunning footage you're about to see.
The Bigfoot Explorer vanished without a trace for years, only to return with a horrifying warning that will send chills down your spine.
Looked at this and said, oh, look at that. How come there's a ridge running right along the end of the finger? And I thought, oh my gosh, that's from the thumbnail dragging.
Yeah.
So this is not just an imprint.
Imagine being lost in a world that twists reality itself, where the air feels alive and the trees seem to watch your every move. Tune in to her haunting revelation and uncover the shocking truth she brought back from the abyss. Ella's fight for escape. Ella thought it was supposed to be the adventure of a lifetime, a solo voyage to conquer the seas and test her limits. She had dreamed of this journey since she was a kid. By the time she hit 23, she had the skills, the guts, and a boat to match her ambition. But what Ella didn't know was that this trip would plunge her into a living nightmare, one she'd be lucky to escape alive. As the sun dipped below the horizon on her second night at sea, a shadow loomed on the water, something that wasn't on any map. The first stretch of her journey was smooth sailing. Days of sun-kissed waters and calm breezes pulled her into a sense of peace. That is, until she landed on a remote island to restock supplies. This wasn't your typical tropical paradise, though.
And I heard a big, loud, heavy animal. It looked like a big gorilla. And that's when I just turned around, grabbed my necklace, and just prayed, please, God.
There was something off about it. The air felt heavier. The jungle that bordered the beach seemed to breathe, its shadows deeper than they should have been. Still, Ella shook off the feeling. She was a scientist, not a superstitious villager, right? Locals from a nearby island had tried to warn her. Don't go near that place. They called it Ape Island, said it was cursed, home to creatures that weren't quite human but not fully animal either. They spun tales about people who'd ventured there and never returned. But to Ella, these were just ghost stories, meant to scare off anyone from poking around. She wasn't buying it. With her degrees in biology and a lifetime of debunking myths, she felt confident that whatever was out there, she could handle it. It wasn't long before that confidence was shattered. As she wandered along the shore at sunset, a low, guttural noise broke the tranquil silence. Her eyes darted toward the dense jungle. That's when she saw it, a hulking figure, shadowy but unmistakably massive, moving through the trees. Her pulse quickened. Gripping the small cross her father had given her, she froze, hoping it wouldn't notice her. But it did. The creature's eyes locked onto hers, gleaming like coals in the fading light. It wasn't just watching, it was assessing her.
Walking along just fine. To my right, I heard something. It sounded very heavy, and I was maybe 10 feet from it. I had a cross around my neck, I grabbed it. I looked back one time, and when I looked back, its head was just...
She didn't wait to find out what it wanted. She bolted back to her boat, her heart pounding. As the darkness deepened, she secured the vessel, determined to leave at first light. But the night had other plans. A sudden storm erupted, battering her boat with ferocious waves. It wasn't just any storm. It felt targeted, as if the island itself was trying to keep her there. Exhausted and terrified, she clung to her cabin's railing, praying the anchor would hold. When dawn broke, the storm had passed, but her relief was short-lived. The island loomed closer than ever, its jagged cliffs now within arm's reach. She hadn't drifted there. She'd been pulled. The stillness of the morning was unnerving, the water eerily calm. As she stepped onto the deck, she realized she wasn't alone. Footprints, massive, unearthly, traced the sand leading up to her boat. The realization hit her like a punch to the gut. Whatever she'd seen in the jungle last night wasn't just watching, it had followed her. Ella's instincts screamed at her to leave, but something held her back. Curiosity? Stubbornness? Whatever it was, it kept her anchored there, trying to piece together what was happening. That's when the first attack came. Her boat jolted violently, as though something had rammed it from below. Scrambling onto the deck, she saw nothing but open water. And then it hit again, harder this time. The anchor chain snapped and the boat spun wildly. Panic clawed at her as she gripped the rail, trying to steady herself. That's when she saw it. A grotesque, ape-like creature rising from the water, its massive hand gripping the side of her boat. The thing was a nightmare made flesh. Its skin glistened, its eyes empty and soulless. As it climbed aboard, the boat groaned under its weight. Ella barely had time to react before the creature lunged, its claws slashing through the air. She dodged, grabbing a flare gun from the cabin. A shot fired, the flare bursting into a fiery arc, startling the creature enough for it to retreat back into the depths. But Ella knew this wasn't over. Over the next few days, her survival instincts kicked into overdrive. The island's creatures weren't just mindless beasts. They were organized, watching her every move.
Quite unusual, really, because we've been becalmed for most of the day, so it's been a bit of a treat to have clear skies for most of the day and a couple of albatross circling around Pink Lady.
One night, they cornered her, driving her into the jungle. That's when she stumbled upon something that froze her blood. An ancient village, abandoned but littered with bones, human and otherwise. This wasn't just their territory, it was their hunting ground. The creature's leader soon made itself known, a towering figure draped in bone armor, its presence commanding fear and respect. It didn't kill her outright. Instead, it seemed to be testing her, pushing her to her limits. Was she prey or was she something more? The days turned into a blur of terror and resilience. Ella fought back with everything she had, crafting traps, using her wits to stay one step ahead. But the creatures were relentless. Her final confrontation with the leader was a battle of wills. Cornered at the edge of a cliff, she faced it head-on, armed with nothing but a makeshift spear. The creature lunged, and Ella sidestepped, sending it plummeting into the abyss. Gasping for breath, she didn't wait to see if it survived. She raced back to her boat, finding it battered but still seaworthy. With the last of her strength, she set sail, the island's shadow fading into the mist behind her. Ella returned to civilization a changed woman. Her tale was met with skepticism and disbelief, but the scars on her body and the haunted look in her eyes told a story no one could deny. She'd gone looking for adventure and found something far darker. The island's creatures, its hybrid horrors, were real, and they were still out there, waiting for their next unwitting visitor. Ella's story became a cautionary tale, a chilling reminder of how little we truly know about the world's uncharted corners. For her, the adventure was over, but the nightmares had only just begun. Months later, Ella began piecing together accounts of similar encounters. Remote villagers from other parts of the world spoke of hybrid creatures that ruled hidden lands, creatures that acted with intelligence and intent. These weren't isolated incidents. Patterns emerged, stories aligned. Could there be more places like Ape Island scattered across the globe, each hiding its own horrors? Driven by equal parts fear and curiosity, Ella started documenting her experience. Her notes became detailed, vivid recollections of the island's every sound, sight, and terror. She wasn't just recounting the events. She was trying to understand them. How had these creatures come to exist? What role did they play in the ecosystem of that island, and possibly others? Her scientific mind refused to let it rest. Her obsession grew. She revisited the coordinates of Ape Island on nautical maps, cross-referencing with old journals and ship logs. More often than not, ships had gone missing in that area. Survivors, the rare few who made it back, spoke of monstrous shadows, of storms that appeared out of nowhere, and of eyes that watched from the jungle. Ella's story wasn't unique. It was just the latest chapter in a much older, much darker narrative. Ella thought she had escaped, but the island wasn't done with her yet. A descent into the island's shadows. Even as she pieced together the story, Ella's own health began to falter. Sleepless nights and constant paranoia took their toll. Her scars itched, a phantom reminder of her escape. But she couldn't let it go. Something about that island, about the creatures, pulled at her, like a siren song she couldn't ignore. Friends and family begged her to let it go, to focus on her recovery, but Ella couldn't. The island wasn't done with her, even if she had left it behind. It was a year after her escape when Ella made the decision to return. This time, she wouldn't go alone. She assembled a team of researchers, each an expert in their field, each skeptical of her tale but intrigued enough to join her. The journey back was fraught with tension. Every wave, every shift in the wind felt like a harbinger of what lay ahead. When they finally reached the coordinates, the island was shrouded in mist, just as she remembered. Ella's return marked the beginning of a new chapter, one she hoped would provide answers. But as they stepped onto the beach, the same oppressive air settled over them, and Ella realized one undeniable truth. The island had been waiting for her. Explorers have always had this itch to go places nobody's been before. It's like they just can't resist poking their noses where the maps end, chasing after something bigger than themselves. Some make it back with wild tales and trophies. Others vanish into thin air, leaving us to wonder what went wrong. But every now and then, there's a story so weird, so out there, that it makes you question everything. Like the one about a guy who supposedly crossed into another dimension and came back with a warning that'll keep you up at night. First off, let's talk about this whole other dimensions thing. Sounds like sci-fi, right? But it's not just for nerdy books and movies. Cultures all over the world have stories about hidden realms, portals, and otherworldly beings.
Then it takes off and crosses this gap, and he goes into full-blown panic mode. The camera goes dead. He's like, we gotta go, we gotta go. He's like, do you got your gun?
Back in the day, these tales were warnings. Don't mess with stuff you don't understand, or you'll regret it. Fast forward to now, and even scientists are saying multiverse theories might not be so crazy after all. String theory and all that jazz hint that our universe might be just one in a gigantic cosmic playlist. If that's true, maybe, just maybe, it's possible to slip through the cracks. History has its fair share of unsolved mysteries when it comes to explorers. Take Percy Fawcett, for example. Back in the 1920s, this guy went looking for some legendary lost city of Z in the Amazon, and poof, he was gone. People have all sorts of theories about what happened. Disease? Angry locals? Or, and here's where it gets juicy, maybe he found a portal to another dimension. Fawcett's own writings are full of hints about ancient civilizations and secret gateways. Could he have walked into another world? Spooky thought. And then there's Ludwig Leichhardt, a German explorer who disappeared in Australia in the 1840s. People searched high and low, but he and his crew were never found. Local Aboriginal legends talk about special places where the lines between worlds get blurry. Some say he might have stumbled into one of these spots and, well, never came back. Again, it's all speculation, but it's enough to make you think twice before wandering off into the bush. Let's fast forward to the modern era and the Bigfoot Explorer. This guy wasn't just some random dude. He was out there chasing stories about Bigfoot, that famous, hairy mystery of the woods. One day he goes into the forests of Washington State, an area famous for Bigfoot sightings, and nothing. He's gone. People figure he got lost, maybe fell down a ravine, or had a run-in with a bear. But years later, out of nowhere, he's back. And his story? Buckle up, because it's wild. Bigfoot Explorer says it started as a regular trip. Just him, his gear, and a whole lot of trees. But then things started getting weird. The air got heavy, like trying to breathe through a wet towel. The usual forest sounds? Gone. Not even a bird chirp. And then there was this feeling, like eyes on the back of his neck. But every time he turned around, nothing was there. Before he knew it, the world around him went full-on Twilight Zone. Trees started twisting into bizarre shapes. The light turned all wrong, like an endless sunset that just didn't feel right. He realized he wasn't in Kansas anymore, or anywhere close. Bigfoot Explorer called them not human, but not alien either. They were tall, with freakishly long limbs and blank, smooth faces. Creepy as heck. At first, they just watched him, like a bunch of curious kids poking a bug. But then they got bolder, edging closer, almost like they were testing him.
The thumb probably does have a very tapered tip, just like the other fingers. When you run your finger across here, you can actually feel that little condyle.
He survived by eating glowing plants and drinking water that tastes like liquid metal. Time was all messed up too. He said it felt like weeks, but when he came back, years had passed here. Weird, right? The worst part? The message he got from these beings. They didn't talk like we do, but somehow they dumped a bunch of images and feelings into his head. He's convinced they were warning him about something big. According to him, the boundaries between our world and theirs are wearing thin, thanks to humans trashing the environment. If we keep pushing it, he says, the two dimensions could crash together, and trust me, that's not a party you want to RSVP to. Of course, skeptics had a field day with his story. Hallucinations? Sure. A desperate bid for attention? Maybe. But here's the thing, he's not the only one with tales like this. Other dimensional travelers talk about similar stuff. Time acting wonky, impossible landscapes, and encounters with bizarre beings. These experiences leave marks too, and not just the emotional kind. Some come back with scars or health issues they can't explain. And mentally, forget it. Most of them can't shake the feeling that they don't really belong here anymore. The island had been waiting, and Ella was about to discover why. Science meets myth. Science doesn't exactly back these stories up, but it doesn't dismiss them outright either. Theoretical physics throws around ideas like extra dimensions and parallel universes, even if we're not close to proving any of it. String theory talks about tiny hidden dimensions curled up like a ball of yarn. The multiverse idea? It says there's an infinite number of universes out there. If even one of those theories holds water, maybe, just maybe, these accounts aren't as nuts as they sound. Let's not forget the role of myths and legends in all this. Cultures worldwide have stories about crossing into other realms. The Norse had their rainbow bridge, the Bifrost connecting Earth to Asgard. In Hinduism, there are lokas, different planes of existence with their own vibes. Whether these are just metaphors or something more, they show that humans have always been fascinated by the idea of stepping into another world. But what happens to the people who claim they've been there? Most don't have a great time. They're often stuck between two realities, struggling to fit back into everyday life. Some turn to religion, thinking they've had a spiritual awakening. Others dive into science, hoping to make sense of what happened. Either way, they're usually haunted by what they saw and felt. We don't have solid proof of other dimensions or travelers from them. But these stories keep coming, and they're not going away anytime soon. Maybe they're a mix of imagination, cultural influence, and wishful thinking. Or maybe they're glimpses into something we're not ready to understand yet. Whatever the case, they remind us that the world's still full of mysteries waiting to be unraveled. This obsession with the unexplored has driven humanity since time immemorial. From ancient seafarers crossing vast oceans to astronauts aiming for the stars. Our species has always sought to uncover the unknown. These endeavors often brought great discoveries, but they also came with substantial risks. And the fascination with unexplored territories didn't stop at physical frontiers. People have long wondered about metaphysical and dimensional unknowns. Could there be other layers to existence, just out of reach?
The way it comes out of the trees is what we call a Groucho walk. It's very typical of what witnesses say Bigfoot walks like.
Belief in other dimensions isn't confined to fringe theorists. Renowned physicists and mathematicians have explored hypotheses involving multiverses and higher dimensions. Carl Sagan famously discussed the concept of a fourth dimension in his works, using analogies like flatland to explain how a higher dimensional being might appear incomprehensible to us three-dimensional creatures. Stephen Hawking's work on black holes further entertained the possibility of alternative realities beyond event horizons. While these studies remain speculative, they grant some intellectual credibility to the idea of parallel dimensions. From a cultural perspective, such accounts resonate deeply with humanity's oldest stories. Ancient myths and folklore teem with references to hidden worlds. In Celtic traditions, the otherworld was a mystical realm reachable through natural landmarks or certain rites. In Mesoamerican beliefs, cenotes were seen as portals to the underworld. Even today, urban legends abound about places where the veil between dimensions grows thin. These stories reinforce the human tendency to see mystery and meaning in the unexplained, keeping the idea of parallel dimensions alive across generations. The psychological effects of supposed interdimensional experiences are fascinating as well. Many claim such events leave them fundamentally altered. Survivors often describe a profound shift in their understanding of reality, accompanied by persistent feelings of alienation. They may feel disconnected from their previous lives, haunted by the awareness of something greater and incomprehensible. This mirrors the experiences of people undergoing traumatic or near-death events, who frequently report similar psychological and existential transformations. It's worth considering the environmental implications of the Bigfoot Explorer's supposed warning. If human activity is truly eroding dimensional boundaries, what does that say about our stewardship of this planet? Beyond climate change, pollution, and deforestation, could there be deeper, unseen consequences to our actions? This layer of speculation adds urgency to the broader discussion about sustainability. After all, if our carelessness can disrupt our dimension's balance, who knows what else we might be affecting? Do you think Ella's fight for survival was fate, or did her curiosity lead her to doom? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more thrilling stories.